Hello, and we're back. This is chapter 7. I'm trying a new style, as you can see. We're going to try this. I'm reading off of my phone. I cannot see the book itself, so we'll see. Chapter 7 Desire. This emotion may range from mild wanting to an obsessive, driven craving for something or someone. It is also expressed as greed, obsession, hunger, envy, jealousy, clinging, hoarding, ruthlessness, fixation, frenzy, exaggeration, overambition, selfishness, lust, possessiveness, control, glamorization, insatiability, and acquisitiveness. Never satisfied, never enough, must have. The underlying quality of this emotion is its drivenness. When we are at the effect of desire, we are no longer free. We are controlled by it, run by it, enslaved and led about by the nose by it. Here again, the essential point of freedom is whether we have chosen consciously to fulfill a certain want, or whether we are just being blindly run by unconscious programs and belief systems. Desire as an obstacle. There is often a lack of understanding of the function of wanting and desire. The main illusion is seen in the statement, the only way that I'll get what I want is by desiring it. If I let go of my desire, then I won't get what I want. Actually, the opposite is true. Desire, especially strong desire, example, cravingness, frequently blocks our getting what we want. Why is this so? Actually, the way something comes into our life is because we have chosen it. It was the result of our intention, or we made a decision for it. It has come into our life in spite of desire. The desiring was actually the obstacle to its achievement or acquisition. This is because desire literally means I do not have. In other words, if we say that we desire something, we are saying that it isn't ours. When we say that it isn't ours, we put a psychic distance between ourselves and what we want. This distance becomes the obstacle that consumes energy. The impossible becomes possible as soon as we are totally surrendered. This is because wanting blocks receiving it and results in a fear of not getting it. The energy of desire, in essence, a denial that that what we want is ours for the asking. This is a different way of looking at achieving goals than the one we used to from the one we are used to from the programming of our world. We are used to picturing ambition and success as being associated with hard work and the classical Protestant ethics virtues. Protestant ethic virtues. These include self-sacrifice, asceticism, I don't know how to say that, great expenditure of effort and endeavor, keeping our nose to the grindstone, tightening our belt, buckling down, and all the grimness of hard work. When we look at the whole picture, it sounds arduous, doesn't it? Well, it is. It involves struggle, and the struggle results from the block we have put in our own way because of desire. Let's compare the arduous, lower consciousness way of achieving goals with a higher state of consciousness in which we have acknowledged and let go of the desire. We are in a freer state. In a freer state, that which is chosen manifests in our life effortlessly. We surrender the emotion of desire and instead merely choose the goal. Picture it lovingly and allow it to happen because we see that it is already ours. Why is it already ours? In In a lower state of consciousness, the universe is seen as negative and denying, frustrating and reluctant. It is like a bad, stingy parent. In a higher state of consciousness, our experience of the universe changes. It now becomes like a giving, loving, unconditionally approving parent who wants us to have everything we want, and it is ours for the asking. This is creating a different context. It is giving the universe a different meaning. Although the world may be stingy and hostile to other people, there's no reason why we should buy into this paradigm. When we buy into it, we make it that way in our own life. As we experience the letting go of desires, we begin to see that what we have chosen will come into our life almost magically. When we hold in our what we hold in our mind tends to manifest, as was said before. During times of supposedly high unemployment, some people are not only employed but have 2 or 3 jobs. This was a shockingly new way of looking at the world when it was first encountered. There was the hope that it was true, but also a skepticism that said this just isn't possible on a pragmatic level. A strict Protestant ethic background made it hard to believe. Nonetheless, the willingness was there to be open-minded, enough to give it a try. Here was the initial experience with letting go of desire. Personal goals were written down, followed by a letting go of the desire for them. It sounds paradoxical, but this is the process. Identify the goals and then let go of wanting them. One goal that has been held in mind for several years was an apartment in New York City, because work commitments required a lot of commuting and the money spent on hotel and a lot of commuting and money spent on hotel rooms. A small apartment in the city, a so-called pied-à-terre, I don't know, would be the economical solution. Apartment in New York City was written down as a goal. When utilizing this way of achieving goals, we include all of the details, as impossible as they may seem to the rational mind to achieve. So the ideal apartment was detailed. Reasonably priced on Fifth Avenue in the 70s block, right next to an entrance to Central Park. At least 8 or 9 floors up in the rear so that the street noise would be minimized. And not any bigger than about 2.5 rooms. The next day at work, it was busy as usual with a big caseload, meetings, and patient visits. In between the meetings and patients, the feeling of wantingness for the apartment would be acknowledged and let go. And as the day progressed, the apartment was actually forgotten. At 4:30 p.m., after the last patient, there was suddenly the impulse to drive into the city. Despite the fact that it was ostensibly rush hour, the road was clear and the drive took only half an hour. The car cruised to about 73rd and Lexington, pulling up to the nearest real estate office rather magically, and there happened to be a parking space open right in front of the real estate office. The real estate officer, upon hearing the tongue-in-cheek announcement that an apartment on Fifth Avenue was desired, looked with surprise and said, "Well, you are certainly in luck. Exactly 1 hour ago, we listed the only apartment for rent on all of Fifth Avenue at 76th Street and on the 9th floor. It's the rear apartment, 2.5 rooms, and the rent is reasonable. Rent controlled at $500 a month. It has just been painted and you can move in any time." So we walked over and viewed the apartment. It fit the description of the goal exactly. The lease was signed on the spot. Thus, within 24 hours of trying the letting go technique on a specific personal goal, the goal was a reality. It had been something that was almost impossible to find, and yet it happened exactly as pictured, effortlessly, and with no negative emotions. It was an easy and joyous experience. This is not an unusual experience, but a typical one, because in this case, the desire was moderate and could, without much effort, be totally surrendered. By being totally surrendered, this means that it was okay if the department happened, and it was okay if it didn't. Because of being totally surrendered, the impossible became possible, manifesting itself effortlessly and rapid. We can all doubt this mechanism and look back at things that we wanted and that were achieved through ambition, desire, craving, and even obsessive, frenzied wanting. The mind says, well, what if I had let go of the desire for those things? If it weren't for the desire, how would I have gotten them? The truth is, we could have gotten them anyway, only without anxiety, fear of not getting, without all the energy expenditure, without all the effort, without all the trial and error, and without all the hard work. Well, the mind says, if we got it effortlessly, how about the pride of achievement? Wouldn't we have to sacrifice that? Well, yes. We would have to relinquish the vanity of all that sacrifice and hard work that we put into it. We would have to give up the sentimentality about the sacrifice, the self-sacrifice, and all the pain and suffering we went through to achieve our goals. Peculiar perversion in our society, isn't it? If we suddenly become successful almost effortlessly, then people are envious. It really annoys them that we didn't have to go through all kinds of anguish, pain, and suffering to get there. Their mind believes that such anguish is the cost that must be paid for success. Let's look at this belief. If it weren't for the negative programming that made us believe otherwise, why should we go through any cost of pain and suffering to achieve anything in our life? Isn't that a rather sadistic view of the world and universe? Other blocks to the achievement of our wants and desires, of course, are unconscious guilt and smallness. Peculiarly, the unconscious will allow us to have only what we think we deserve. The more we hang on to our negativity and the small self-image that results, the less we think we deserve, and we unconsciously deny ourselves the abundance which flows so easily to others. That is the reason for saying the poor get poorer and the rich get richer. If we have a small view of ourselves, then what we deserve is poverty, and our unconscious will see to it that we have that actuality. And as we relinquish our smallness and revalidate our own inner existence, our own inner innocence, and as we let go of resisting our generosity, openness, trust, lovingness, and faith, then the unconscious will automatically start arranging life circumstances so that abundance begins to flow into our life. As we free ourselves from out of the lower states of consciousness, such as apathy and fear, we come into wantingness. And what was formerly an I can't and impossible now becomes possible. The general progression of the levels of consciousness as we go from the lowest to the highest is to move from havingness to doingness to beingness. At the lower levels of consciousness, it is what we have that counts. It is what we have that we want. It is what we have that we value. It is what we have that gives us our self-image of worth and position in the world. Once we have proven to ourselves that we can have, that our basic needs can be fulfilled, that we have the power to provide for our own needs and those of others who are dependent upon us, the mind begins to become more interested in what is that we do then. We move to a different social set in which what we do in the world is the basis of our value and how others rate us. As we move up in lovingness, our doingness is less and less preoccupied with self-service and becomes more and more oriented to being of service to others. As our consciousness grows, we see that service, which is lovingly oriented towards others, automatically results in the fulfillment of our own needs. This does not mean sacrifice. Service is not sacrifice. Eventually, we become convinced that our own needs are automatically fulfilled by the universe, and our actions become almost automatically loving. At that point, it is no longer what we do in the world, but what we are that counts. We have proven to ourselves that we can have what we need, that we can do almost anything given the willingness. And now what we are within ourselves and to others becomes most important. People now seek our company, not because of what we have, not because of what we do in society's labels, but because of what we have become, because of the quality of our presence. People just want to be around us and experience us. Our social description changes. We are no longer the person who has a fashionable apartment or a big car or a bric-a-brac collection, nor are we labeled as the president of the so-and-so corporation or a member of the board of directors of some organization. Now we are described as a splendid person, as someone whom people have to meet, just have to know. We become described as a charismatic person. This level of beingness is typical of self-help groups. In self-help groups, no one is interested in what others do in the world or what they have. They are only interested in whether or not we have achieved certain inner goals, such as those of honesty, openness, sharingness, lovingness, willingness to help, humility, genuineness, and awareness. They are interested in our quality of beingness. That's where I'm going to stop. Tomorrow, I'm going to start with glamour. And I believe this video will be 2 or 3 parts. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.